IHS, advancing decisions that advance the world.
I think we're in interesting times in that with crude oil at around about $120 as we are today, then for many operators, then the lure of finding oil, which still remains for many quite straightforward, is offset by the operation of some of the assets which actually turn it into products that people want. So we're seeing, I think, the onset and the continuance of a set of sales of refining assets that will culminate in more innovative players operating and using these assets, perhaps in novel ways and also in ways that perhaps we've not seen before. So new players largely, not the traditional downstream operators, people who and operators who believe they can see a margin in some of the few remaining refined products markets that exist. I think the paradox for many refiners is that we are in a position where they find their market shrinking. In fact, if you look in Europe, the only real growth markets are in diesel for cars and trucks. Jet fuel and petrol are largely static to declining. So we find fewer markets to actually deliver a margin. Still a large number of players looking for those kind of markets. So in fact, the return outlook for many of these operators will be fairly poor. One of the vices that refiners find themselves in is that in order to meet the stringent quality standards that exist in the remaining product markets that are attractive, they'll need to invest. In order to meet environmental standards, they will actually often have to invest quite sizable sums. And so you and I think, would look at this and say, are we going to get our money back with a margin on top? And many refiners are clearly pretty clear that they won't. So the environmental avenue, which we're all chasing down in order to try and keep our world a cleaner place, has been a tough place for refiners, who are now finding that in order to produce those clean fuels that we are coming to demand, that in fact they will need to invest in capital to a great extent in order to keep up. I think one of the areas that the nimble will look to is to operate their refineries in the best way they can. Now that may sound simplistic, and one would imagine that's happened in the past, but I think the simple cost efficiencies that refiners have perhaps not implemented in the past have become imperative. And the more thoughtful ones that will include things like good control room design, better application of technology, better interface of people actually operating equipment. And I think the ergonomics of working in refineries and making refineries pay is becoming very much to the fore. All those factors, I think, will be picked up by the innovative, and we'll see people like SR actually, I think, exploiting refineries which are under capacity. Shell's Stanlow refinery, we've seen in the news in the last week, operating at around about a fifth below capacity. Now, if you can squeeze capacity out of that and do it in an efficient way, I think that's potentially a formula for success. I think nimble is certainly the keynote. It will mean slimming facilities, it will mean selective investment in parts of plant that require investment, it may mean selective new additions. More likely it will mean contraction and operation in a way which suits how the market looks. And we know that transportation fuels have become, diesel aside, a very challenging area. Most refiners will look to do the best they can with what they've got, but inevitably many will think that if they can't do that, then they'll look to sell, and I think we shall see many more sales in the near future.
IHS, advancing decisions that advance the world.